So what's up guys, I'm Black Ops Amazing, welcome back to another video on the channel where today we're going to be taking a look at 5 things you may have missed in Black Ops 6 Zombies, looking at Easter eggs and storyline related content. Not things as small as a mark on a zombie or a scar on someone's eye, but details hidden within the story. So I've picked out 5 that hopefully you won't know, maybe 1 or 2 that just means you're a Zombies pro, but let's take a look at the first one then, which is on Liberty Falls. Now, if you've done the main Easter egg and you've collected and listened to all of the radios on this map, you would have heard one from Richtofen's Chief of Security, John Blanchard, where he mentioned someone called Josiah Shem, who was the person that built, or at least had his flock build, the mansion that we see Richtofen staying in the intro cutscene. We aren't told too much about Josiah, but we believe he was the leader of a cult, or I should say an occult, more to do with the mystical and supernatural side. Josiah had his occult followers build this mansion for him, but there was a reason, just like Richtofen, why Josiah had his flock build it, because ever since its completion, as you would imagine with an occult, weird shit went down there, to the point where in the end Blanchard hints at Josiah Shem meeting some kind of gruesome ending. Blanchard says this:
I keep thinking about how my granddad wouldn't take me to Fort Washita when I was a kid. I wanted to do their bullshit ghost tour for Halloween. Sounded like dumb fun. Sorry, Johnny, that place is bad medicine. Granddad actually used those words, and he meant it. Now I'm starting to think the same thing might be true about the mansion. I'd like to believe Josiah Shem didn't know what he was doing when he had his flock build the place. If he did, then he got what he deserved. Shems Folly. Ain't that the truth? Every owner after him, captains of industry, gangsters, you name it. All their money and power couldn't save them. Shit like that doesn't just happen without other forces at work. Granddad knew that. But that's where the director wants to bunk down. And I can't talk him out of it. So my job's making sure he doesn't end up like everyone else who moved into the murder mansion. Lucky me.
Blanchard specifically says, I'd like to believe that Josiah Shem didn't know what he was doing when he had his flock build this place. If he did, then he got what he deserved. Shems Folly. Ain't that the truth? And well, in Liberty Falls, just outside of the map near the graveyard, you can see a sign with 2 different locations on it, one pointing towards the lower town of Liberty Falls, which is 3 miles away, and then the other pointing up the hill towards Shems Folly. And if you look in that direction, you can see the folly in the map, which, just in case you don't know what a folly is, it's a building with no real practical purpose, mainly for ornamental reasons. So this right here, what you can see just outside of Liberty Falls, is Josiah Shem's Folly. Now, how exactly he met his end, we don't know, and it isn't too clear whether he died in the Folly or in his mansion, but a really interesting comment I saw over on Reddit, which I might even do a separate video about, it's that good, mentions how Josiah Shem could be one of the Shadowsmiths, who, just in case you weren't following along with the Modern Warfare 3 Zombies storyline, might be this person we see in the mirror, but this is like 40 years later. However, this mansion is clearly haunted due to whatever rituals and occult practices Josiah Shem and his followers were doing here. And the Reddit comment basically said he thinks Josiah was doing some sort of ritual here to become one of the Shadowsmiths. And even without this isn't a normal mansion. There is a radio you can find in Terminus from someone called Maxwell who says, rumor has it, people are disappearing from inside of the mansion facility. So Terminus employees were just randomly disappearing from here. And another thing Blanchard mentioned was how every owner of this mansion after Josiah, so captains, industry, gangsters, whoever, all of them died here. Money and power couldn't save them from this mansion. So clearly there's something abnormal about it. To say it's haunted would be an understatement. It's almost like Josiah put a curse on it. But that's the exact reason why Richtofen wanted to stay here in the first place. He didn't just see this mansion on Rightmove and say, okay, that's near the town of Liberty Falls, this is where I want to set up my base of operations. He chose this mansion because he knew of Josiah Shem and his cult. Whatever Josiah did to this mansion, I think Richtofen is going to use as a part of Project Janus to perhaps get his family back, his wife and son. We know he is learning how to time travel, which is something they could do in the old Ether multiverse, but not so far in the new Dark Ether universe. So there's a lot of stuff going on there in the background, which is super interesting. But the first detail I really wanted to bring up in today's video is you can see Josiah's Folly in game. which is a big part of the backstory. And because it's outside of the map, unless you're looking in this direction or you even know about the storyline, you've listened to the radios, you perhaps wouldn't think anything about it. Now, the next thing I want to show you, which you may not have paid too much attention to, but it's pretty obvious it's in plain sight, and that is the cells of our characters, Weaver, Carver, Gray, Strauss, and Raptor 1 in Terminus. You can see them in the intro cutscene, but you can also see their cells in-game as well. The only one we witness has more detail to it than the others is Weaver's, where on his wall he's got all sorts of carvings that he's done. Now that we know the story in this map, we understand a little bit more about some of the stuff he's written on the wall. You can see all of this in-game, Richtofen's name, the tally marks, the Requiem logo, Victus Mortem. But yeah, all of these standard stuff you can see in Weaver's cell that you could see in the cutscene is also there. Looking at the others, nothing really stood out. There are books on the table, but they're plain. There's no images or writing on them to see what the crew could have been reading. There's a little bit of detail in this cell right here, where there's a black and white picture on the table. I can't tell what that's a photo of. And also in this cell, which I believe was Strauss's, there is a note on the table which looks like it has some detail to it, but it's too blurred for me to read. Whether any of this can be found in the game files and can be extracted, because that's happened a lot of time over the years in Zombies, where there is stuff like this which you can find in game, which is really difficult to read even through a sniper scope, but when extracted from the game files you can kind of make out a lot of it. At the same time, it could be absolutely nothing, but to see all of their cells in game in the same condition you see them in the cutscene, along with extra little details that you wouldn't have noticed, is cool. Now, the third thing I want to show you, I've already done a video on 2 gravestones that you can find in Liberty Falls, which belong to characters that we are very familiar with, or at least have the same surname, meaning more than likely they were family members of characters that we knew. For example, you can see the grave of Ruth Dempsey, who must have been someone related to Tank Dempsey. Just going off the timeline, when she was born in 1880 and died in 1900, I think we established this must have been his sister, because Dempsey was born in the late 1800s as well, about 10 years after I think it was. So we have the grave of one of Dempsey's family members. You could also find the gravestone of someone called Jack Brierton, who has the same surname as Misty Brierton from Black Ops 2 Zombies, so that's one of her family members. But another one that was pointed out to me that I didn't notice last time was a gravestone belonging to someone called Josiah Brown, born in 1880 and died 10 years later in 1890. And well, just like the other two, the surname Brown we have heard before, belonging to the creator of the original Pack-a-Punch machine, Jebediah Brown. In Buried, we learn all about his storyline, how he was a miner, how he went down into the mines, dug up element 115, and it started to affect him. His mother, who was actually killed by a zombie, is the ghost you find in Buried haunting the mansion. Her name was Catherine Brown, but Jebediah Brown died in 1885, where he succumbed to the zombies, and he would have been born in the 40s, meaning this Josiah Brown person, if he is related to Jebediah Brown, it wouldn't be unfathomable they were alive at the same time. This Josiah Brown person couldn't have been his father because he was born after, but it could have been his brother, which if that's the case, unfortunately he died when he was 10 years old. To what? We don't know. It also could have been a cousin or a distant relative. Either way, I think there's a high chance this gravestone belongs to a family member of the creator of the original Pack-a-Punch machine. Now, some more details that I want to show you that you will probably come across when you do the Terminus Easter egg, but unless you're using a sniper rifle, which most people aren't because it's not the gun to use for defeating the boss, you're not going to be able to see any of this clearly. So what I've done is got a sniper, started doing the Easter egg, and when I got to this step, we can now take a closer look at what some of these documents on the wall say. So just to give you a bit of backstory, in Terminus there was someone called Owen who worked at the island. He started off as a member of the Tech Ops team, but eventually came to lose his mind due to his exposure to Ethereum. He then started learning about all of the shady shit that was going on at Terminus Island with Modi, and so decided he was going to out them and started collecting as much evidence as he could. And he stored all of this evidence in the shipwreck, which is what you see right here. Now, he was caught later on and turned into Patient 13, which is the giant octopus creature that you see on the map. But just taking a closer look at all of these documents that Owen collected, because there's some really interesting stuff here that even I haven't seen before, because I've never had a sniper when I've come in here. There is a document from Richtofen to Modi where he says, "I hired you to accomplish one mission above all, regrowth of a complete and functioning human body from a single DNA sample. Why, despite all of the resources and test subjects I provided, have you failed to deliver on that goal? My patience has limits." And then Owen wrote underneath, "How does all of this add up?" There is another document from Richtofen, which is dated January 17th, 1980, and it says, "RE, your upcoming quarterly report to the Joint Chief of Staff. Here are my latest talking points to assuage our military partners that we are using their black budget responsibly. Bone cancer vaccine results look promising. Still a year from ready. Limb regeneration trials hold great hope for amputees. especially veterans. Army Chief of Staff lost his leg in Vietnam. And 3, I will personally present a list of Dark Ether bioweapon possibilities to the JCS next quarter, provided funding continues. And then Owen wrote underneath, lies. They have no idea what's happening here. So that gives you an idea of the cover story Richtofen was using to conduct his own experiments here at Terminus Island. There is another letter to the Tech Ops staff, which is from Modi, that says, when you were selected for duty here at Terminus Island, you were each trained in the proper protocols. For close to 6 years, we have maintained secrecy. However, there have been recent unauthorized communications, including one traced to an independent journalist who has since been dealt with. Keep an eye on your teammates. We all face consequences if let down our guard. And then Owen wrote underneath, did Gerald ID me before they killed him? And that was because it was Owen who hired this independent reporter to do some digging. And then you can also see loads of little sticky notes which talk about the other Janus facilities, the towers, the mansion, the keep, which is going to be DLC 1, Citadel de Moor, along with this one at the top, which is the most interesting to me, where Owen has wrote, time travel? Seriously? Where, as I mentioned in the first point, that is something Richtofen is experimenting with. And then the final thing I'm going to show you, which I'm pretty sure I saw the Game Revolution point out, which I thought was cool because I can kind of see it, is both cutscenes in Liberty Falls and Terminus have elements in them from Shadows of Evil and Zetsubo no Shima, or similarities. So for the first cutscene in Terminus, we see Maya's brother Nathan on the floor begging for her to kill him because of the monster that he's turned into, asking for a mercy killing. And then we go over to the Zetsubo no Shima ending cutscene, where we had a similar situation. Both maps take place on an island in Asia, both have sadistic scientific groups working on them. Takeo, just like Nathan, turned into a mutant creature, a giant thrasher, and at the end he also asks his premise version to kill him. And well, as for the Liberty Falls ending cutscene, you see Panos, who was trapped in the Dark Ether, tricks our characters where he switches positions with them. He is free and now we are trapped in the Dark Ether. And then the final words that come out of his mouth are, now if you'll excuse me, I have a few scores to settle, bye bye Dark Ether, and then he runs off through the portal. And in the Shadows of Evil ending cutscene, just as the Keepers are about to hand us the summoning key, Richtofen appears out of the portal. He says, I'm sorry, I don't have time to explain. I have a universe to set right. Thank you and goodbye, and then runs off through the portal in a pretty similar way to Panos does, leaving us, the Shadows of Evil crew, to die because a day later, this dimension gets destroyed, killing them. Similarly, with Panos leaving the crew in the Dark Ether, more than likely to die, especially considering we were just playing as operators, so we can assume that will be their fate. So there we go, 5 details that hopefully you didn't know about in Black Ops 6 Zombies. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. As always, hopefully you've enjoyed the video. If you have, drop a like rating. Make sure you are subscribed to stay up to date with the latest content on the channel. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Until then, goodbye.